She is Allie Gehring, Sirius XM producer with ESPNU Radio. That is channel 84 on the Sirius XM lineup. And she works with Full Ride, Rick Neuheisel and Chris Childers from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. I encourage everybody to check it out. She works on that show. As far as her ride, that's what we're going to talk about, her journey in the business here on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and with UCLA, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So, Allie, I saw that Joe Girardi called you an American treasure. Why is he correct on that?
So, Joe Girardi is actually a big Full Ride listener. He met Rick when he was still with the Yankees and told Rick about how he was a listener to the show. He is a huge, and I mean diehard, college football fan. He went to Northwestern, so he's a big Northwestern guy, but he's also had the opportunity to talk to Alabama and is close with Nick Saban, so he's a very big Alabama fan. So he and Rick knew each other. Then Joe started coming on our show every so often, and Joe and Chris connected. And Joe calls Chris all the time just to talk football. Like, just to be like, what do you think is going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? Why did Alabama do this? Who's making the playoff? Whatever. And we have him on our show every so often, mostly in the off season, because he's a little bit busy during the baseball season, but he's a huge college football fan. So he is a diehard Full Rider, like listens all the time, knows all the jokes. We had a dinner with him at Army Navy in Philadelphia. And I swear to you, Bryan, a half hour of the dinner was him asking us the origin story of half of our production. Like my nickname as the American treasure, we play creep in when Childers says something inappropriate. How did that start? How did you get Morgan, Chris's daughter, to refer to Rick Neuheisel as your wife? So he's a diehard Full Rider. So that is how that came about. But Joe is really cool. He's such a nice guy.
I'm sure he would say that you're really cool as well. And let's go to the origination of this crew you have here and the fact that you guys have been working together and the success is emanating, and it's really cool to see. But at what point early on did you realize, like, you've got some serious chemistry with this group and this is going to be something special?
Honestly, it was really cool. So Full Ride was together before I came onto the show. Kind of when you start working in radio, I'm sure you know it, you kind of move around a lot. So I was on a few different shows. And then when I had my daughter, I came back from maternity leave, and that's the show I ended up on. Honestly, for the most part, because I liked Chris and Rick and I was the associate producer at that time, but it also schedule-wise worked really well with childcare and kind of a work-life balance situation, because before I had been doing the 7 to 10 a.m. early mornings, and that just wasn't really going to work with the new transition I was going through in my life. So I came in as the associate producer, and I've been there for 5.5 years. I guess my 6-year anniversary with the two of them is going to be in March. And I don't know, it's so much fun. And I never used to be able to run an audio board with the amount of production we have for other shows. I don't know what about Full Ride made it click, but it's just, we've had so much time together. And I think it really helps that all of us were together 5 days a week for so long. And then when Mike Garvin went to produce for Mark Packer in the afternoons, like I got to move up. And so we've all known each other for a while, and we remember all of the times and jokes and memories we've had together. So it just kind of built up from there.
Yeah, that synergy is palpable. Allie Gehring is with us. You can find her on Twitter at agehring91. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. As far as the jokes and as far as when you're on the air with them and headlines and stuff, why does that click so well? And how are you able to inject your personality into that show?
I feel like I just started off as the crazy Maryland fan, honestly, because that's where I went to school. And Chris, to his credit as a host, is a big fan of multiple voices. He doesn't just want it to be him, talking the whole time, or Rick talking the whole time, or just the two of them going back and forth. And he wants whoever's on the show to be involved from an on-air perspective. And not every host is like that. So it was a really cool opportunity for me, even as an associate producer, to get little times. And I remember the first time I got to talk on air on that show was during Get Yourself Together, which is a segment where you get to go off basically on something that you think is going wrong in college sports, someone you want to correct. And I did mine about Maryland because I was so nervous. I was like, okay, what do I know? Like, I will just yell at Maryland sports. And they were kind of shocked by it, like, because I feel like I come off very quiet sometimes before you get to know me and I'm around a lot. So it just kind of went from there. And the best thing about being on air and producing for those two is that it's really impossible to seriously make a mistake, because anytime that something happens, it just becomes a joke. So, I mean, you have to be prepared that anything that you say, right or wrong, at any point can just become a bit going forward for as long as they find it funny. But it does make it easier to go on air. Like, I don't get as nervous, because I know if I do say something wrong, I'm going to freak out about it as a perfectionist more than the two of them would. Like, they just are going to make it a joke and think it's hilarious for however long I'm with the show.
What is a memorable joke or bit that you recall? Something that you did or something that really got people laughing? If there's anything that comes to mind specifically on a take you had, or where the guys just busted out in laughter.
Oh man, I feel like there's been so many. Unfortunately for Chris, I feel like his mistakes are the ones that constantly get pointed out. And so the one that just jumped into my head just happened a few weeks ago. So Coach Neuheisel does a segment on Thursdays called Thesaurus Thursday, and he picks out an underappreciated term in football and kind of breaks it down for the listeners and for us. But since it's Rick's segment, Chris has this tendency to sort of zone out during it. So Rick asked him a question, and Chris was trying to talk about Vanderbilt Stanford, which was the next week from whenever this happened. So his response was, "My guess is Stanford." And Stanford was not even part of whatever the discussion was we were having at the time. So that literally just became a drop forever. Like, whenever someone was talking, like just randomly inserting childers going, "My guess is Stanford."
If we drop yourself into you as a college student at Maryland, what is the psyche of a Maryland Terp fan compared, and what makes it different than any other fan of any other college institution in the country?
Maryland fans are very passionate, and it can either be positive passion when the team is doing really well and they're winning, or it can get a little bit negative, I feel like. I mean, that probably is every fan base. Like, you have your crazy people that kind of go off the deep end, but Maryland fans love their school. They love their flag. Like, I love the Maryland flag, and so I embrace it. And when I started working at Sirius XM, it was odd to me because we have so many people from so many different states that, like, not everyone loves the Maryland flag. And when the football team started doing the crazy uniforms where it was a different flag pattern every week, like, not everyone thought that was cool. I thought that was the greatest thing ever when I was in college, because that's when they started doing that. But yeah, I would just say we have an irrational amount of passion and love for our programs, no matter how good or bad they are. I mean, this is the place where, because I went to a ton of Maryland Duke games. Maryland was still in the ACC when I went to school there. And ESPN did not want to come there for those games because the profanity that came out of the student section whenever anything happened about Duke was just craziness.
What had to have been crazy in a great way was when you took your daughter Ava to your first game with her at Maryland, knowing the passion that you have. What was that experience like?
It was so much fun. It was so great. Her first football game, I don't think she really remembers because she was so little, and all she cared about was Testudo, the Maryland mascot. And she didn't understand why we couldn't just go hang out with the mascot for the whole game. That's what she wanted. But since she's gotten older, she kind of noticed more things. Like, we went to 3 football games this year, and she actually was into it. Like, figured out when the right time to cheer was asking questions, got to get me to buy her some food and a stuffed animal of Testudo we didn't need. Like, she loved it, which has been really, really, really fun. Her first basketball game was 2 years ago, I guess, because last year, obviously with COVID, there were no fans. So in 2019, we went to our first basketball game, and it was so late at night because we had gotten tickets at the last minute, and it was a 9 p.m. tip. And I'm like, I'm not sure how this is going to go because this is way past her bedtime. And she was so quiet the entire first half. I'm like, maybe I made a mistake. She's too young. I should have waited longer. And then she got used to it. It's like she snapped into it and had the best time and was dancing around. And now it's funny, fast forward to 2 years later, and she's in kindergarten. So it's a little bit more difficult to blow off bedtime to just randomly drive to College Park and go to basketball games. And she is so mad at me that we haven't been to a game yet. I keep waiting for a weekend, post football where we can go and we don't have to worry about her having school the next day. But she's like, why aren't we going? Every time it's on TV, she's like, why aren't we there?
How has
so
having
funny.
her by your side broaden your perspective and changed your outlook on broadcasting and the way in which being a mom has really given you a new perspective, a beautiful perspective on your job and what you do?
It is so different. And I feel like my time management skills out of necessity are now so much better because if I don't get something done in the window I have child free to get it done, it doesn't get done. You know, like, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices as a parent. And one of them is trying to balance your career with being a good mom. And honestly, like, I'm not perfect at it. I'm sure there are days where Ava's not excited that I have to do something for work that's kind of outside of normal work hours, because that's what happens when you work in sports. It doesn't ever really turn off. But I really think it just makes me more grateful to be able to go in and do what I do every day. And it's cool. I have this video of her when she was like 2 years old. And at that time, she was spending a lot of time with my parents when I would go into studio for the day. And my dad told me for 3 weeks, like, every time you come on during the headlines, like, she recognizes you and she starts freaking out. I'm like, there's no way she knows that that's me. Like, Dad, she's a 2-year-old. Like, she has no concept of what's going on. He took a video of it. And it honestly made me so emotional to watch, to listen to it and watch it. Because I used to have this like speaking part right before the full ride opened. The minute that it switched and I started talking, she starts going, it's mommy, and is freaking out. And it was so sweet. So she is definitely a huge fan. She got to experience full ride live and in living color during COVID because I did so many shows from home. So other than wanting to put, earplugs in during some of the segments where we would go off the rails, like, please don't learn any of the words that we're saying. Go play and do something else. But it's really fun. And it's just an extra layer to what I get to do. It's really cool.
You're strong-willed. You're so strong overall in what you've gone through and how you've been able to craft this career. What about you, Allie, is where you get that strength from in being able to, like you said, manage your time in a way in which you've got to be a mom, you have to work in broadcasting and dealing with all of this. Where did you get that strength?
Honestly, I would have to say it's from my support system. My family lives very close to me, and all 5 of us are very close. And my dad is one of those listeners of radio you don't talk about anymore, that everyone wants to talk about the attention span. Like, people only listen for 7 minutes at a time. They go away and they come back. He will sit there for an entire 3 hours and just listen to full ride. So
Wow.
I'm so lucky that really anyone in my family, if something comes up where, I have to go back into studio during a pandemic, I have to do shows at home, can I have help from there? Like, I have a ton of support and help, and I would not be able to do any of the things that you just said about balancing being a parent and working and just life in general without that support. So I think that's where it comes from, a strong foundation.
Where has that support meant the most to you? And I know you've talked about how they help you and with Ava, but seeing how much they are involved in your life, seeing how much they listen, seeing how much they care, seeing that your dad, like you said, will sit there and listen for 3 hours. How does that make you feel loved and appreciated in a way where you can look at your dad, for one, and say, man, I just want to do everything I can to make it in this world, to make it in this life because of him, because of the love that he has shown me?
For sure. I mean, that's where my sports fandom comes from. I mean, he's a Maryland guy through and through, all the local teams in Washington, D.C. That's how I was raised. Like, that's everything was on in the house. And I just immediately had a passion for it. And, like, as a female, it's more normalized now than it was then. And I'm sure even before me, it was harder. But growing up as a female sports fan, you don't always have that support from the people around you. And it was never a joke. It was never anything but supported and encouraged. I mean, with whatever my sisters and I wanted to do, it was, but we just happened to have the same parallel interests and passion for sports. And honestly, my mom is crazy about college basketball. She grew up in North Carolina, and she legitimately scheduled the birth of my sister around the Duke Carolina game. And she will be mad if she watches this. I'm sorry, it's the Carolina Duke game. She'll be very, very upset that I didn't say it in that order. But yeah, she needed to be induced and the game was on a certain day. So she said, we'll do it. We'll do it on the 8th of March. And that is when my sister was born. So that is kind of the crazy sports family that I come from. So I have to make it big for them to make all of this worth it.
As soon as your sister learned about that, like what was her raw emotion and natural reaction to that?
Honestly, she is the least sports fan of all three of us, is the ironic part. She is an amazing singer. So that is kind of her path and what she's into. So she doesn't really watch sports that much, but so she just does the head shake. But like, if you know my mom, it's not a surprise that she would do that, because life is organized around the North Carolina basketball schedule or the Maryland schedule. She's a lot nicer towards Maryland now that they're in the Big Ten. It used to get very contentious, but now it's okay. Like, we all kind of coexist very nicely together. And my daughter will cheer for North Carolina on occasion, which is hard for me, but it makes my mom happy. And she had 3 Maryland fans in the house, 4 if you count my dad too. So she can have Ava occasionally. I can rent her.
You can rent Ava
for a little bit.
just to give her a little bit of support. Allie Gehring is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. So we talked about the psyche of you overall as a Maryland sports fan, but as far as the psychology of you within a game, and knowing that not only are you a diehard fan, not only are you an alum, but that you also work in sports. Take me to that place.
Well, Maryland sports is a lot like I picture Charlie Brown feels before he's about to kick the football. Lucy's holding the football and it feels like every time, like, this is the time he's going to get it. She's not going to lift it in the air. It's going to happen. And sometimes the football goes in the air and you miss it. So the problem with that in terms of work is that it is very likely to come up on the show, because I have branded myself. I mean, I am a passionate Maryland fan, but I've made that very apparent on the air. What's really cool is the number of people that will tweet at me through the course of a game, and they're not Maryland fans. Like, they are fans of other teams in the Big Ten. They're SEC fans. But I had so many people tweet at me when Maryland beat Rutgers this weekend to become bowl eligible, saying, congratulations, how excited are you? Are you going to go to the game? Depending on the bowl site. So it's really cool how Full Ride Nation, sometimes, some of them don't. I mean, like Penn State fans, they don't embrace Maryland football, even though I am a Maryland fan on the air that they listen to and claim to enjoy and follow on Twitter. But it is fun, like, having the listeners reach out about that stuff. And I do sit there sometimes during games and worry, if Maryland loses this, is this going to come up? Like, especially if it's bad. Now, luckily, the positives have happened. But, I had to sit there during our pick segment last week, and Neuheisel has been obsessed with these 5 and 6 teams playing for bowl eligibility. He brought it up multiple times last week, and I'm like sitting there this weekend, and I'm like, dear God, if Maryland doesn't beat Rutgers, I'm never going to hear the end of it, because all of them picked Rutgers. So I'm like, I have to represent in a positive way on the show. Like, we better win this game, and we did. And that's such a big moment for Mike Loxley in that program. And in the playoff structure, I feel like the bowls kind of get lost in there. No one's really paying attention as much to the conference races that don't involve the playoff. No one's paying attention to a team that hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016 finally going. But for the program, that was a big moment. So it was really cool. But I also did have to dual watch it with Ohio State, Michigan, because at the same time, I'm working and this is the game. I can't fully cut off Ohio State and Michigan and Jim Harbaugh getting his first win over the Buckeyes to just fully root on Maryland. So it is kind of a give and take sometimes.
Well, you have to be like you are, such a good multitasker in so many ways, as we talked about, not just in the world of sports and how you cover sports, but also in how you wade through life, being a mom and having to deal with all these different things. Allie Gehring is with us. I am Bryan Fenley. At the forefront of who you are, Allie, is passion. And I see that as someone who works in sports, as someone who's such a fan of not only your alma mater, but being able to do what you love. Where did that passion come from for you?
I mean, it definitely started young, being passionate about sports. And then I dabbled in sports journalism in middle and high school, but then it wasn't really until I went to Maryland, I was in their journalism program, and it hit me like this can be a real career. You know, this doesn't just have to be, you know, a passion or something I do on the side. Like this is something I could really do. And then when I started interning at Sirius XM, it just fit. Like, it's the first place I ever worked where it was just like, wow, like, and all I was doing, I was an intern in a newsroom. I was cutting interviews and audio highlights. That's it. And I loved it. Like I would look forward to going in there and learning new things. It was so exciting. And then I did a second internship, and it was directly with it was College Sports Nation at the time. It was pre the ESPNU brand kind of coming on the scene. I remember the producer at the time, Patrick Shuck, let me call Danny O'Brien, who was the Maryland quarterback at the time. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I'm like, I got to talk to Danny O'Brien on the phone. Like I have his poster in my apartment. Like this is crazy. And it's gotten better and better and better ever since. It's crazy. It's been so much fun. It's a lot of work and it's hard sometimes, but it's so much fun.
Where does that fun come now? Like you've been at Sirius XM, if I'm not mistaken, Allie, for like 9 years.
Yeah. My 9-year anniversary was about a month ago.
So over the course of those 9 years and seeing how far you've come, how does that feel for you and resonate with you, knowing the journey and where you started and my goodness, where you are now?
You know, when it really hit me is the last 2 interns we've had have asked me to like do a Zoom kind of like this and just asked for career advice. I was kind of like, wait, I feel like there's some sort of mental headspace where I'm still the intern kid that, you know, people are giving advice to. And it actually hit me. I'm like, no, I'm the person that people want to ask. Like, how did you get here? What should I do going forward? So that was a big eye opener for me in terms of that used to be me, and now that's not me. And now people that are like what I used to be are coming to me for advice. It was crazy. Like that was a mind-blowing moment for me.
Allie Gehring is with us. I am Bryan Fenley. Of course, you can follow Allie on Twitter, Gehring91, Channel 84. Get that show Full Ride. Lock it in. Rick Neuheisel and Chris Childers, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. It is such a blast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. So your personality, it works so well for sports radio, and you know that, and it's really encouraging to see and inspiring to see how far that you have come. Where in your career, Allie, have you had to be the most persistent, or where resilience was tested the most, and you can look back and say, man, I can take some pride in how I was able to overcome something and get yourself to where you are today?
I think it would have to be becoming a mom, honestly, and the early days of going back to work directly after having a child. I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I went back to work after 6 weeks, which every person that I've said that to looks at me like I'm insane. Like, why didn't you take more maternity leave? And I admire stay-at-home parents so much, and I love my daughter so much, but I was ready to go back mentally. Physically, I'm not sure I knew what I was getting myself into during that. And just that was the first time I feel like when I started in radio, what was preached to me was availability. You know, like say yes to everything. Like take the I did the scoreboard show shift for years, you know, like that's the post game after college football, you know, you work till 4 a.m. and I would wake up for the Washington football team game on Sunday because I'd just be exhausted. You know, I produced weekend mornings. When I was in college, I would go into work after classes ended for the day, or, you know, I don't have classes on Fridays, so I'll work on Fridays. I'll go out on Friday night and still go in Saturday morning and produce radio that starts at 8 a.m. I could never do that today. Like, it would take me out. I woke up for the Dusty and Danny show on Thanksgiving. I was like, I used to do this every single day. And now I'm like, it's 7 a.m. What am I doing? I think going from that to really having to advocate for myself and my time and for my daughter was really hard for me. Kind of having to be more selective of, this is the show that works for my schedule. No, I can't take this shift because, you know, I don't have coverage for Ava, you know, and I've been so lucky to have support in that hasn't happened that often, but it's just like the conversations you have to have. And then the patience that I feel like my bosses had to have for me. And my host says I kind of navigated like coming back to work and how that worked with having a child. You know what I mean? Like how to structure my day. I remember my program director now, I was having trouble sending rundowns out on time because when I would fill in for Mike as an AP, I was trying to do everything in the morning, you know, take care of Ava in the morning, do my show prep in the morning. And she looks at me and she's like, why don't you do all of that the night before? Like, what's going to change? If you have to update something, you have to update something. But, you know, if you're struggling in the morning, you know, do it the night before. And that was just it sounds silly, but it was a revolutionary concept for me. And now that's how I do all of my show prep. Like I try, like in my brain, it's like when I go to bed at night, like full ride is set for the next day. Now there are breaking news moments where, you know, you take the rundown and you rip it up in a million pieces and throw it away. But, you know, that was a moment for me that was hard, you know? So it's just the whole adjustment to mentally going from, I need to take every shift that I'm offered and I need to grind and do all that stuff to kind of like, okay, I need to find a balance between still having that passion and that grind and wanting to succeed and help everyone where I can, but also knowing what I need to do for Ava and what I need to do for myself, like in terms of time. I just, that adjustment has been hard, but I think we've mostly figured it out. There are days where it's not figured out, but I think for the most part, it's a lot better now.
And Allie, for the most part, it just seems very storybook for you and how your story has played out. I think so many people can learn so many different things, sports fan or not, dealing with being a mother, how to handle that with work, and then going on and having success in a career that you've had where in a way you've kind of had to be a little bit of a trailblazer in a way, you know, like you said, when you were younger, there was this stigma that, you know, a female sports fan, and you're breaking down doors, you're doing incredible stuff, and the business is so much better off with you in it. And it's like, I know you now, and then like 5 years from now, it's like, you're going to forget about me. You know, you're going to be like, it's the top of the world. But Allie Gehring with Sirius XM and ESPNU on Twitter at @Gehring91. Of course, check out her show Full Ride, Rick Neuheisel and Chris Childers, 10 a.m., 1 p.m. Eastern weekdays. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Allie, this was so much fun. Thanks for opening up about your life and your journey and how far you've come, and so much more to come for you. But I wanted to spotlight someone who I felt was really inspiring, lots of perseverance, and someone that we can all learn something from. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you having me on and giving me this platform. I can't believe I just talked about myself and not the show and football for this long. I made it to the end, so I'm excited for that. And definitely, if you're listening, tune into Full Ride if you want to crack up for 3 hours, because I feel like that's what I get paid to do, is laugh and push buttons.